some spicy bans here from both players, honestly.
Wow, okay. Interesting. The Warlock getting banned out is kind of fascinating to me because personally, I feel like the Warlock and the Druid are just completely exploitable and beatable and punishable by any tier 1, tier 2 Hearthstone deck that you have in your lineup, right? Particularly anything that can just generate a bunch of cards and keep going. But I guess that's actually not what Bly's lineup does if he has his Priest taken out. Because he has Demon Hunter and Druid, which are things that sort of finitely fight for board, and when they're out of stuff, they're out of stuff. Maybe that isn't necessarily the case against those two decks, but I still think that he has pretty good matchups across the board against the unusual decks that I would expect either the Priest or the Warrior to be banned out personally, because they're at least the decks that can just draw the good half of their deck and ignore all the weapon removal that they don't necessarily need to draw against you, and then maybe pick up a win more often in the series. But clearly, Blyze has his own way of approaching this. But from a more top-down perspective, I think this is fascinating because we watched it, Raven. Blyze tried to deal with this once already with Warrior in his lineup, and he clearly did not have a good time. That was not the Hearthstone that he wanted to play. So I think, honestly, this is just a straight-up feel choice that he's gone with this week in playoffs, where he's just said, I don't necessarily care if it's optimal. I don't know if I expect Jarla to do the same thing again or not, which is another talking point. I just straight up don't want to play that series of Hearthstone again, so I'm not putting Warrior in my lineup, and I think that is generally the way Blyze thinks. I think he just wants to have a good time.
I think as well, like I was mentioning before, there is, to me, looking at Blyze's lineup, it doesn't feel that weak without Warrior.
Right.
And I think that's a good positive. The 4 decks he has feel like strong decks. Maybe we can talk about Highlander Priest versus 2 of course, but generally, the lineup looks good to me. So I don't mind this at all. We are going to dive into the Druid Mirror, though, although a mirror in class, definitely not in deck, as Jarl, of course, has this fatigue / heal / taunt / not dying to Warrior Druid. But how does that perform against when it has to actually deal with survival of the fittest big Druid, so to speak?
Yes, badly would be the answer to that. Certainly the Druid, the Quest Druid, has a chance, but it really involves them ramping ahead of the opponent, which they're unlikely to do. They only really have Nourish, thank you very much, game, in order to be able to do that, and that comes down later than the ramp options that Blyze has available. But we are kind of watching the Bizarro world pan out here, where Jarla has every potential to actually get out ahead on tempo and on ramp than the opponent by being able to go Oasis Surger into Nourish now over the next couple of turns.
Yeah, especially because it's Oasis Surger. Although, again, he is going to have to put it up against this Thresher. They will be able to basically just get those trades down, even if it puts them in a weak state. I do like it quite a lot.
Yep.
The easy Nourish next turn looks insane for Jarla, at least obviously based on what we can see. Blyze still has a whole turn before he can even go for, like, Mount Seller Ironbark for his 7 cost.
Right.
Would there be any reason for Jarla to just kill this?
Go Wrath Crystal Power instead, you're saying?
Yeah, and then just depend on what he draws, obviously just go Ooze after it, potentially.
Can see it. Very confused about what this arrow is doing right now, though. I'm not sure what this is indicating, but...
Gotta try that Wrath face, right?
Yeah. It's just too strong. Like, double value trade into Nourish. Like, you win the board, you make your opponent react to you, and then you use that turn of them reacting to you to find the room to cast Nourish and just get ahead of them. Like, it just seems so strong. I feel like this is just how you win in what is a pretty nonsense matchup that you're absolutely not supposed to win from Jarla's position.
At least for Blyze's point, he does have the ability to deal with these. It's slightly unfun, of course, for he turn 6, but he can kill them. I think if he couldn't have killed them, or he had to have used Broom, for example, Blyze would be in pretty dire straits right now in this game. But I think he's holding on for now, especially with a couple of decent turns now that Broom's active. He has some way to react to Jarla being ahead on board, actually.
Yep. There we go. Perfect curve so far, by which I mean 5 into 6. That is the perfect curve for Quest Druid. Ignore everything else. 1, 2, 3, 4 is irrelevant.
Now I wonder if this is actually ever wild growth now. That goes into 9 mana next turn, in which you can go for the Mount Seller turn and potentially have the Survival of the Fittest on top of an already pre-built Mount Seller board.
Mm-hmm.
But Jarla, do you think Jarla's going to just set up heavily on the board now and just kind of negate that as even an option?
Yo.
Looks like he can.
Certainly does look like he can. Is there any merit to Steladris Oasis Surger here? I don't think so. Just looking at it over Groundskeeper. Like, it's actually slightly awkward with his mana. The only real curve play that fits is like 2/2/5, but that doesn't actually achieve that much in terms of getting a huge board presence for yourself.
I actually just like the Oasis Surger and the Groundskeeper.
Sure.
It's just a ton of stuff. Like, what's xBlyzes supposed to do?
I mean, the Oasis Surgers have Rush, though. That's the thing. So, like, playing them now is kind of like net 0 power on board, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I'd much rather play other minions and then have the Oasis Surger next turn. So you go, like, Hidden Oasis Steel Beetle, maybe? It's tough.
It is like the 9 mana is making it tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if he was on 10, the turn becomes way, way, way better.
Yeah.
I think for me, this just puts the most stuff on board right now, and he has plenty more plays next turn as well. Because this means he doesn't. You're 100% right about the tempo and like the rush ability, of course, making it kind of the same play next turn. But this means he doesn't have to play the Oasis Surgers next turn.
It's just innovate Survival of the Fittest, right?
Unless he thinks he can get the absolute god beasts from the exotic Mount Seller, like, because he does have the broom, right? So if he went like Mookla or something,
that's true.
Then, like, he has the broom. If he god beasts it, then I know.
Interesting. But so
what, 3 beasts?
Next turn he would get to rush a 9/12 and a 5/5 at minimum, just with the broomstick plus all the other beasts that he would have anyway. Felt like maybe over the course of 2 turns that was a guaranteed swing, but obviously it is much, much slower than what you're doing now.
Right. And this, even with 1 terrible beast, this still looks pretty strong.
It does. You want to preserve maximum minions here, but you also want to do it in a way where you don't get completely wiped out by Starfall, which... Yep, that looks pretty good. Bunch of 3 health minions as opposed to having 2 health minions. Seems reasonable.
But now Jarla can pick apart this board pretty well. There is Steladris and Wrath, which is huge.
Yes.
So many contradictions.
Do you think he could ever, like, trade the 5/5, Steladris, Wrath, the Mount Seller, and then just Oasis the 5/5?
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it.
Because it leaves stuff up, which is obviously scary, especially who we can see. But Blyze is only playing 1 Survivor the Fittest. I don't know how much of a read Jarla should or could have.
Right.
It's just interesting to get a 6/6 down and get the value from the Steladris.
Yeah, I think you just wrath everything though, right? Like, particularly because the other copy of just like deal 1 damage, draw a card is actually really useful on this board state anyway. Like, I think everything just lines up too nicely for this play.
And don't get me wrong, this is definitely the first play that we all saw, right? So that, you know, a lot of the time the first play is the best play.
Yeah. Can shoot and refresh as well.
Yeah, this is nice. Okay, nice. Yeah. Oh, now it's time for the old 10 mana play.
Yeah. I'm still curious about what happens if those 2 turns happen in the other order. I'm really curious about it. It's very hard to reconcile it though, right?
Yeah, it's because the board did look tricky. It's just that Jarla had such a powerful response, right? Now, do you like the quiet time of getting Lucenbark down? Do you take that approach where, well, I'm winning, I have board, there's nothing on the other side. Should I spend 8 mana on my like most expensive, clunkiest thing for the biggest payout later?
I think start of this turn, I would immediately be thinking that as well, and then I might get distracted by this giant Wind Fury thing that I can make instead, which might just end up ending the game. I think it's honestly pretty close, because everything you say about Lucenbach here is spot on and actually like makes sense in the like vanilla version of the matchup that you'd be playing out. But Jarla's actually Jarla's just got to be the aggressor this game, right? Like somehow he's actually got to be the more aggressive of the two druids, which is ridiculous. So I think you kind of have to adapt your stance on the matchup and just play the most aggressive thing you can instead. Yeah, I love this.
Yeah. And Steladris should not be allowed to live, should he? Like, look at it. It's ridiculous. It should have dies at end of turn on its card text, because look how powerful this is.
Yeah.
So speaking of power, wow, Bly's got a pretty good turn himself. Out of nowhere with that Guardian Animals.
He has to just hero power the 7/10 though?
Always nature
he
studies.
Does. You are right. He does always nature studies.
Always plays nature studies.
Yeah. Okay. That changes things. So now the nature studies is free if he wants to go for it, but now he hero powers. All right.
Well, yeah, he hero powers because otherwise he puts a 5/5 into a 1 health minion, right? Which feels real bad. But look at all the options Jarla still just has. So many. I don't even think I can tell you all the cards he's got in hand because there's so many of them, and they're all green.
Yeah. I mean, pop quiz on who knows the names of all the split up Steladris forms of the choose one spells, right?
Not me.
Not me!
And now Lake Thresher, Animated Broomstick, though, Sol. Omu, Nature Studies, big minions, many mana spent, rush. These are all the things that Blyze can do next turn.
Packages tied up with string. These are a few of Blyze's favourite things. Is that what we're going for? Sure, what happened.
It was me explaining Blyze's hand and possibilities in the way it feels. Lots of big clunky stuff.
Yes. No schnitzel with noodles, though, because even in this ludicrous hand, those still aren't two things that ever go together. How did that song get away with that, honestly?
This is a teaching moment.
Well?
In time, you too will bloom.
You not?
Wait, should he wild growth first?
Right, it's weird, right? You can wild growth. Obviously, you can nature studies first, then play Omu, then play wild growth. But that does nothing because you still waste the discount. You save 1 mana, but you waste your nature studies discount, so it doesn't achieve anything. But yes, wild growth first, then Omu, then nature studies. I think was certainly worth looking at.
Well, you'd proc with the card draw, right? With a refreshing crystal.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that excess mana. That's it. No, refreshing crystal.
Refreshing crystal.
When Raven gets to name Hearthstone cards. This is huge, though, right? This is actually ridiculous that this is all pieced together for Blyze. He's not necessarily won, but he's not lost yet, which a couple of turns ago looked quite silly that we could have said he could have been in a not losing position.
Currently, there is a copy of Starfall on the far right of Jarla's hand, which is a very big deal because up until this point he had not drawn one, and it really is the only mass removal tool the deck plays. Again, because it's so highly tailored to dealing with Bomb Warrior specifically, it doesn't need a bunch of AoE to be able to do that job, right? So you can punish it quite easily by making multiple wide boards. But Jarla's, this is the first one he's really been face down with, but he hasn't had the Starfall up until this point. That's actually a pretty timely top deck.
The problem is with using all those Wraths and the generated versions, with using the Crystal Powers, this Starfall doesn't actually really do anything. Right? It deals 7 to 1 thing, of which the 2 things he wants to kill have more than 7 health. Okay, he gets hold of a Wrath, which is huge.
Yep.
He can actually do something now. This looks a lot better, but until that Wrath, wow, this Starfall pretty much just killed a few 1 health minions.
Two minions hit face.
That breaks the Guardians, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it was already broken. It was already only...
Yeah, it's a complete brick now. Yeah, it's a complete
yeah,
brick.
it's now a pointless card. Yeah.
Mhm.
Still, though, not a bad play for 10 mana. An 8-10 cleave and an 8-9 taunt.
Indeed. Stretches out this overflow as well, because I think he would really like to draw his Ysera before he rips the overflow. That overflow being a fill your board with 7 dragons on demand card is actually incredibly powerful in this matchup, I would say, because they just don't have the tools to deal with that board state if you're able to make it in one fell swoop.
Yeah, yet again, we wind back to, does Starfall kill it?
Nope.
No? Oh. That's the problem. And now, there is the Winged Guardian from the Wimrest play early from Jarla. But it's not going to be good enough.
You can make it pretty big taunt with an Iron Bark, though, but either way...
Just doesn't look big enough, does it?
Pretty
That's the
happening.
problem.
Yeah, so his Winged Guardian is naturally an 8-10 right now because of Embiggen, but obviously he can't put the Iron Bark on the Winged Guardian to make that any bigger, so he'd have to do that on one of the other taunts instead, which really don't get similar sizes anyway. But spending your entire turn dropping this 8-10 taunt just doesn't really feel great here. No, he's not, right? I was going to say he's dead on board, but he's not quite because of the Embiggen buff.
No, it doesn't add up. Yeah. I was actually wondering whether he ever just overflows first. But it doesn't... I'm not sure if that really changes the outcome of his turn anyway, with what he's got left in the deck. Can't exactly hero power this down. Well, okay, he could hero power it down, but he shouldn't. Yeah, this looks good. Nature Study's a really good pickup as well.
There's the Ysera. It's a big deal. Last 2 cards are second Overflow, actually, and Innovate is the one remaining card after that.
Look at his hand. Double Bloom, double Overgrowth, and there's Overflow and Innovate.
Yeah.
It's just going to be game. Blyze just about gets there, but that was not looking good for Blyze up until the last few turns there, honestly. That was looking like Jarla was going to just steal a cheeky win. But Blyze managed to fight back just about, getting hold of the resources in time. And honestly, that second Mount Seller really digging him out some trouble there, I think.
Yeah, and it just goes to show like how weak some of these decks are. You know, they can feel so powerful in the right situation. If all your deck is trying to do is go face and deal damage, then that build of Quest Druid can certainly be extremely frustrating to play against. As soon as you're capable of playing Hearthstone and actually putting minions on the board and building a board state and playing for stats and snowballing tempo, as the majority of Hearthstone decks do try and do, it just can't do anything. It has 2 Starfalls in its deck. That's it. And if you are able to get anything out of range or exhaust those 2 options and then keep making boards past that, it just can't hang with you. And that's exactly what we saw there from Jarla. Handful of cards, handful of resources, 100 points of healing left in his deck still at that point, potentially. Just conceded because he knows he can't win. He can't fight for the board anymore in the position that he was in. And that is just how feast or famine the strategy is that Jarla has gone with. And it's the struggle that Jarla finds himself up against now, not having a warrior on the other side from Blyze.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? And although there are some still tough matchups overall, like Demon Hunter versus this Druid might not be the most fun thing in the world because it's just waves of heal and taunt. Well, okay, the Druid gets a win, but then how do the other matchups? For example, Mage versus Jarla's Priest. And Jarla's Priest, although it is, of course, tech to beat Warrior, it is a pretty big downside, I would say. In a matchup I feel is normally quite close.
Yeah.
Like now, the Priest, Jarla's Priest, is running 2 Kartuts. Okay, those are fine minions, but 4 Weapon Destruction, 2 Swampoos, 2 Kobold Sticky Finger. And if there's something that Mage punishes, it's like low health rubbish minions, right? Because that's what it excels at clearing up whilst gaining tempo at the same time. So Jarla's probably hoping he never sees those 4 cards in this game whatsoever.
And Raven, you of all people know how much I object to the idea that like 1 card in your deck can't change things that much.
Right.
It absolutely can. Like 1 space in your deck might change any given matchup by a couple of percent, maybe up to 4% in extreme cases. When you raise that to 4 completely dead cards in your deck in a matchup that is largely considered to be somewhere around 50-50 to begin with, as you were saying, it's insane. It's a huge impact. It's a massive downside. It's just 4 absolutely dead resources that you don't have in place of anything else right now, although drawing a Bloodfen Raptor on curve and playing it is about the best use that you can have for this acidic Swamp Ooze.
And this is the one that you can get away with the most. It's a 2-mana 3/2. Fine. Like, whatever. It's down. He's going to gain some advantage from it. Really, it's the sticky fingers that he's just... You can't play a 5-mana 4/4 do nothing against Mage, right? Like, it's just not a card that becomes even playable at that point. We're going to see if it's going to bite Jarla, but for now, Blyze, even though he has to face down this Ooze, it's just continuing on with his board pressure here. I really like the... what do you like? The Kaj onto the Solarian and then the value trade onto the 2/2? Does that look good?
It does. It does
With
indeed.
Renew?
You could also do the same thing with Renew, yeah, and just potentially take care of the Solarian, or he could trade first and then go with the Renew and then round it all off with Mind Flayer Kaj. There's several different ways to go about doing this.
Yeah.
I do like this
I
one.
like this one.
Yep.
Yeah, me too. It just feels like a win-win-win scenario, doesn't it? Like, every single thing that Jarla's going to present Blyze with this turn is a nightmare to deal with.
So I'll get Mind Flayer Kaj made into a t-shirt so that you can look at it, but I can't see it. Right? Is that what we're saying? Win-win-win?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, tricky turn for Blyze. And this is why... I was talking about Jarla's turn, like, what is Blyze supposed to do? The trade into the Ooze ping seems... Well, yeah, it kills the Ooze, gets rid of the Apotheosis, but then there's just a Kaj. Like, what's the follow-up that the Kaj just doesn't chew up?
Yo.
I mean, okay. You're just going to Blyze it, then fine.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
For a second... And it might still have happened based on that spell. I thought we might have seen a Mana Cyclone into Mana Giant, into Coin Giant the turn after, just to proc the
allies.
Elemental allies.
Yeah, interesting.
So player wouldn't have hated if he whiffed on the Frostball, of course.
All right, significantly worse on curve here from Jarla with the Kobold Sticky Finger.
And this is it, isn't it? Like, look at now. The game looks way more winnable because your opponent just played a 5-mana 4/4.
That is elemental number 1 lined up for Blyze. So he does have to very carefully consider how he wants this elemental allies to pan out.
Ooh.
Whether this is a giant next turn, whether this is a cyclone next turn, whether he's just happy to let the tick on the elemental allies just go away and then pick it up again with cyclone into giant later on.
Oh, could play Dragonmort now.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks... yeah, there's no other good play right now, is there? So that just looks like a good Dragonmort for me. I think we are far too far away for Jarla to be considering Dragon Queen Alexstrasza quite yet.
What is Elun's will?
I agree. I would quite like the possibility of just holding this discount on a Murazond and then finding something else to do this turn, but there is nothing else to do this turn. So I think you just have to take the on-curve dragon and play it here.
Like, if there was different dragons, right, available to him, then I 100% agree. But this is just too powerful, right? It's a pretty weak board that Jarla's playing out here, but he has the board, so keep it.
Yes.
I think would be my approach right now.
It's like, can you really go Pyro Swamp Ooze to preserve your discount on a Murazond? I don't think so.
I mean, I was even looking at Ooze trade heal the minion, you know, just to... He's going to.
He's going to, yeah.
Okay. I'm shocked.
I am shocked too. It's one of those situations where, like, I can see Bly's hand, and I know that Murazond is, like, really core to Jarla being able to stay in this right now, because within the next turn or two, Bly's is going to have an absolute monster turn that Jarla's hand just doesn't compete with outside of doing the same thing. But how does Bly's know all of that?
Oh, okay. This is very good. This is too good. For a second, Sol, I was like, this is a way to play around Murazond to an extent. Make it cast Conjurer's Call.
now this Murozond is a decent response at best, but there's a pretty good chance it leads up the Raz here. You would get a coin, you would get an Arcane Missiles.
And you would get to Wave of Apathy, whether that's valued highly enough. Because you would obviously play the coin.
Okay, really wants the spell damage to appear first before this Arcane Missiles for maximum chance of dealing with the Raz. Okay. Nope. Does deal with the spell damage at least,
Wow.
though.
Okay. Oh, Kieran Tor. Are we going to see it? Problem is, if he plays Kieran Tor, he can't do the Mana Giants Conjurers.
He cannot, no.
He might not want to, but when you can clear a good chunk of the board and Conjurers a giant, you're feeling pretty good about life.
Arcane Explosion doesn't quite fit.
Not playable.
Ah! Oh, it was so
Wait,
insane.
wait.
It was so
just play-
insane.
Would it be enough to just play it first?
To just deal one. It doesn't help with the Murozond problem, right? Which is a problem that needs solving.
Yeah. Sorry, I wanted to just see because Discover was on the screen. Tough one.
Runs out on
Still though, it's a problem Jarla now has. He's facing down not only the Tricaster, but still the Raz.
Yep. Let's have that Pyro in hand, though, which is a pretty big deal here. Clericus Scales is an incredibly clutch pickup here as well, which is another reason why holding onto this Dragonmaw over time has actually ended up being pretty clutch, right? That turn where he diverted away from playing his dragons, I think was crucial for a couple of reasons. One, as I was trying to explain at the time, like, Jarla recognized without being able to see xBlyzes' hand how monstrous his turn was going to be in a couple of turns. But also, because Murozond is a card that sometimes you have to play, having that other dragon in his hand has actually ended up activating that Clericus Scales off the top, which is a very, very big deal as well.
Yep. Now Jarla does have the Soul Mirror as well, so any big giant Conjurers play that Blyze goes for, it won't necessarily be answerable, but it will be able to at least impact the board, right? It's not going to be a pass turn or a Wave of Apathy and hope for a better draw kind of turn.
Right.
Pyromancer come down, can clear up this board if Jarla so chooses, still has the mana to heal up the Murozond as well. Keep it relatively healthy on 4, so Jarla looking pretty good so far. It's definitely up to Blyze this game to make something happen.
Okay, he gets the Giant to proc the Elemental allies. Double Cram session with Lab Partner as well.
Just 3 card draw cards.
Icicle Arcane Missiles here is pretty insane. Do not want to Icicle the Giant first. Sorry, the Murozond
Playing
first.
Icicle, I guess.
Yes? Interesting. Okay. I don't think that's strictly wrong because there's still like Conjurer's Calling outcomes that you can have there. If you're always going to Conjurer's Calling, you could also make the argument that you're supposed to Conjurer's Calling first because not only you can get like Arcane Anomaly and a bunch of other 8-drops can actually change how things happen, right? Like you might get Batterhead and just start trading down all the smaller minions. Like there's a lot of things to consider that turn for sure.
Now here's that Soul Mirror response. Doesn't really get Jarla ahead, but it means he doesn't just die.
Right.
This stuff, so I think he might just be forced into this one.
I wonder.
Jarla taking his time though. He does have to consider the fact that Blyze has just drawn 3 spells from his deck as well, which is very scary.
Yeah, completely agree. It means this hand is about to go places for Blyze. Blyze still has both of his apprentices left in his deck, by the way, so there is
And the evocation,
huge opportunity for this turn to go completely insane. Okay, Jandis is pretty nuts.
What makes something real?
Yeah, you don't really offer. You don't really offer the respect to lab partner in Priest than you would in Mage, of course.
No.
As they don't have that many ways to benefit off the spell damage. So where if this was a mirror, you'd probably, well, potentially have seen double Ray of Frost actually that turn with a Cyclone. Because this is Priest, they don't really benefit from that spell damage anywhere near as much. So Bly's definitely free to just give this lab partner a free kill on the 3-3.
This isn't easy, Raven. Does the 1-3 always go into the 3-3 first? Because if you do it first, you save yourself 1 health on the Raise Dead. However, if you Raise Dead a Pyromancer, you want the 1-3 to hit the 1-2 and not the 3-3. So is that worth taking 1 extra damage? Jarla says it is.
Yeah,
okay.
I can see that.
Okay,
Actually.
now,
I think for
now
1
he
damage,
is just
I like
Tempo
it.
Mage. He's just Tempo Mage now. Yep, Cobalt Spellkin. Yep. All coming together.
All he needed really was a cram session somehow, and that would have been great because it would have completely undone everything I'd said last turn.
Yes.
This Wormweaver is going to be mighty terrifying.
In a fire, needed a Holy Smite to go with that though, really, to be able to take care of the Wormweaver. And it looks like this Wormweaver is going to get to pop off. Trade does happen.
Just going to rip Sorcerer's Apprentice off the top, 100%.
There's 2 of them in the deck. There's only 9 cards remaining. It's not even that unlikely. This isn't like a Blyze if it happens. Like, this just could be a thing. Shambhala. Might just be the next best thing, honestly. Ah, he's gonna dig. He's gonna dig. Yep.
Apprentice off the top. The only place you can draw cards from. Oh, what?
You never rush this into anything, right? You just hold on to it. Yeah.
With Soul Mirror gone, there is not really anything for Blyze to worry about.
It's 2 spells. 2 spells in hand, Raven. Got to think about it on the previous turn, right? Like, how impactful was reborning your Prime in a situation where, like, it was almost always going to get frozen, right? Like, Blyze is a smart guy. He's never going to just trade into your Solarian and give you another out for drawing Prime on the next turn, right? Like, that was never going to be the world that you're in.
Right.
So was the potential Pyro top deck or even the second Raise Dead top deck into the Pyro Resurrection? Was that worth just holding on to that third 1-mana spell?
I don't know, but look at Blyze is ready to lethal with these mana worms. He is so ready to lethal this with Sorcerer's Apprentice. And
Go!
Can he trade anything?
You always
away
trade
here?
the 1-4 and play the second Apprentice. That's always
Yeah,
more damage.
yeah.
It's always more damage. Forget about it.
It is finished.
Definitely lethal. There we go. Blyze taking another game. And it just... and we did just see just a little bit of the problem that Jarla's going to have, or naturally is going to have with the way he chose to build his lineup.
Yeah.
When and if he runs into a play that isn't bringing Warrior, because it was looking pretty decent for Jarla, and then he played a 5-mana 4/4. And then it slowly started to slip away because Tempo Mage excels at dealing with relatively, mid to small size minions whilst gaining tempo themselves. And even with that Soul Mirror into the first, I would say, big board that Blyze made as a response. Well, what about the second, the third, the fourth that he had waves of? And it was just too much for Jarla to handle there. And again, there was what, 2, 3 of the weapon removals drawn in that game? Or was 1
3
Raised Dead? I'm not sure.
Yeah, 3 in the end, I think. But yeah, it starts to become very, very apparent because I can totally understand the perspective from, a less experienced player. It's like, well, it's still just Control Priest, right? Like, surely this deck can still win. Like, just think about what those cards are. Like, that Acidic Swamp Ooze that he played on turn 2, that's a Sethic Veil Weaver in most people's lists. That's the 2-drop that they have in that spot. And Jarla went 2-drop into Apotheosis his 2-drop. If that's a Sethic, the game ends. It's over. Like, forget about it. That actually just straight up changes the outcome of the game. So this is, how apparent tech cards get. And you say that Jarla has some significant problems here with the lineup that he has. And, quite honestly, that problem is that his decks suck. That's just the truth. They're bad Hearthstone decks, but they do one thing very, very, very well. If your opponent is not trying to do that thing, you're in trouble. But now, Raven, we get the closest approximation to what Jarla is trying to counter with his lineup. This Demon Hunter for xBlyzes, this is the problem deck that he has remaining, if he does have one.
Yeah. Does the deck have weapons? Yes. Does the deck want to deal damage to your face with minions or weapons and not necessarily spells?
Yep.
Yes. This is an okay matchup then for the Druid.
Does
the
your
healing
deck
plus taunts
play a River Croc on turn 2? Yes, it does, Raven. Finally, we're here. The
We've seen
tempo
it. We've seen
2-3. It's happened.
And you know what? Of all players, not surprised it's xBlyzes.
Yep.
Me and Sottle have been talking about this for what feels like weeks now, actually. Every single time it comes up for Mana Feeder Panthera, like, ooh, do you play it on 2 or do you pass and take the card draw? xBlyzes, nope, always on 2.
I do like it, like specifically just breaking down this scenario. That 2-3 might deal 4, 6, 8 damage to this Druid, especially since they're just ramping through their quest completion turns right now. So that's huge. Even with it getting Wrathed here, that means the 1-3 is surviving, and therefore that 1-3 is dealing extra damage from you playing that 2-3. This is a bad matchup position to be in, so extra damage is huge. Yeah, I think this is absolutely correct from xBlyzes. Like, his mana is just accounted for all of the way up until Skull at this point.
And look at this as well. xBlyzes chose to not push 2 then equip. He chose to equip for the +2 damage to hit for 4 because 1, he's expecting weapon removal, and 2, this just pushes more and more damage as quickly as possible.
Yep.
A couple of things to note as well. I think the big deal, we've not really talked about too much, but in xBlyzes' list, he is playing the double Battle Fiend list as well, which is a bit of a rarity at the moment, at least in European Grandmasters, and he's playing double Glavebound. So although there's no silence in the deck, the double Glavebound plus Kane is damage from hand that is effectively unstoppable, right?
Right. Sticky Finger now off the top. A little bit of extra security for Jarla, having just hit the ooze. Also pretty crucial is that there is no Horde Pillager in xBlyzes' version of the deck, which actually could have been a huge factor here since he just got a Marrow Slicer destroyed by the Acidic Swamp Ooze as opposed to just stolen away. That actually could have had a big impact later on in the game, but with no Horde Pillager in his list, that's not going to be a factor.
Yeah, tricky turn here for Jarla, actually. He's under a ton of pressure, and
anymore.
Yeah, he's at the point with his health where I don't think it's safe for him to assume that a Groundskeeper would be enough this turn. So I do actually like the way he's going about here. Use the Crystal Power doesn't mean he's not going to gain that health from it, but the Steel Beetle going to be able to heal him back up to 18.
I was interested. Yeah, I didn't expect to see the offensive Crystal Power Steel Beetle there. I was expecting to see the Wrath come down. And if he really wanted to spend his mana, he could still just use the Crystal Power to heal on that turn as well if he really wanted to be mana efficient. An interesting turn.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, we said it last week, and guess what? I'm going to say it again. Jarla going for just maximum efficiency every single turn. Because even then, you could look, right? Hidden Oasis. Seems great. You heal for a turn and get a 6/6 on the board. Taunt. Instead, Jarla going, well, I could just draw a card and put a taunt on the board this turn instead.
Alright, question time, Raven. There's 1 mana still available for xBlyzes. There's a card that costs 1 in his hand. Oh, he actually did it! He actually did it! The madman! Oh, I was setting that up for you to shut me down so hard, and then I was going to come around to your way of thinking, but oh my goodness, it's just in play.
We don't have time for these kind of setups when xBlyzes is playing Sol. We can't do the tricky things. This is interesting, though, and do you want to know why this looks pretty impressive? Jarla can't steal the weapon, kill the 3/4, and put a taunt on the board at the same time. He just doesn't have the mana.
Does he need to do all of those things, though?
I don't know, but making him have to consider doing 3 things instead of 1 thing is powerful. From xBlyzes' point.
Okay. Interesting.
Because, like, Sticky Finger Wrath looks really good right now. But then he again, he's probably still safe, but he's on 15, and he didn't heal that turn when he has a ton of heal in hand.
Right.
So it's, I I probably wouldn't have done it, if I'm honest. I would have just hero powered. But I understand Bly's wanting to put as many threats on board as possible. You did just see some removal with that crystal power as well.
He did, and that might give him a read that Wrath isn't in hand, because of the same thing I was talking about, right? Like, why would you crystal power that minion instead of Wrathing it and then crystal powering yourself? Well, the answer to that might be, well, so you have Wrath for more important minions, as you're seeing here, but again, it might be the kind of read that xBlyzes is developing. I do think it's a really interesting decision, though, because he pushed 3 immediately. Obviously, that's great. He's choked up his opponent's turn, which is obviously great. But he also didn't hero power. So the 3 he pushed is actually only 2 that he pushed, because he didn't weave in the hero power that turn on top of everything else.
Sure.
I think it's a really, really close decision.
There's 9.
Wand Maker. Wand Maker. Make me a wand. No. Okay.
Ooh. The bad one. Literally any other one cost would have been so much better, as is often the case when you get Philosophy.
Yeah. Does still have Twin Slice Blade Dance for the following turn, though, which is huge against the Hidden Oasis taunts. Or Groundskeeper taunt. Basically any taunt that Jarla is able to play.
Did you know killing taunts is useful?
Why, yes. Yes, I did.
He can't go Groundskeeper.
How curious.
Well, he can.
He can, and he is.
He can. Okay.
Again, this is maximum efficiency, because he knows that whichever taunt he plays here, there's a good chance that xBlyzes actually has one good answer for it, and it will get used on this one taunt that he plays, right? So why not make it the worst taunt?
And the longer he holds on to Hidden Oasis, the longer he has a chance at drawing Steladris, in which if he goes Steladris Oasis, he probably just wins the game at that exact moment.
Yep.
Wait, xBlyzes found a way to make Philosophy good! Battlefield!
Wait!
He didn't play it!
What do you mean? We've been waiting 6 damn weeks for this card to actually do something worthwhile. You get handed it on a silver platter, and you're too busy sipping your can of Coke to make the right play? What do you think you're doing?
Nature speaks through us.
You could have saved Philosophy.
You actually could, yeah.
It would have actually just an extra Battle Fiend that's buffed on the board this turn. Oh. Would have done absolutely nothing.
It would have had
looked cool.
0 impact on this game whatsoever, but we would have popped off about it.
It would have had an impact on me emotionally. Okay,
Exactly.
and you know what? That's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. Does look like without a second skull for xBlyzes here, it does look like this game is starting to wind down to Jarla just taking control. The second Hidden Oasis as well is huge. He's healthy enough to. Oh well, there you go. Just play them both and xBlyzes will concede. But yeah, this is one where xBlyzes probably can't be too upset with the outcome, as this I feel is by far the hardest matchup xBlyzes has with Demon Hunter in Jarla's lineup. But still.
Yeah, even further than that, I think it's the worst available matchup for any of his decks in his entire lineup. Like, I think, it's the only bad one, really.
Keep us waiting, Soul Fragment. There we go.
I yield for now.
Good effort there from xBlyzes, but not enough. Jarla's Druid put a win on the board, and like we were saying, to be expected. Good play though from Jarla, and although it stresses me out a little bit watching Jarla play sometimes, and this isn't any disrespect towards him, but because he is so just like, well, no, I can get more out of this later. And it's so like, it feels like so cold logic and efficiency that I'm personally definitely don't play like that. It feels stressful sometimes watching him, but if you went back and watched, you were like, yeah, he was pretty much just always safe. And he got the most out of every resource, every single turn of the game. You're like, right, well, yeah, there's no wonder that Jarla just always does well because he plays well all the time, in ways like that at least.
It was absurd watching him do it against Bomb Warrior last week as well, where keeping your cool in that situation, because every game he plays against Bomb Warrior is a best-of-5 series condensed into one game. If he loses it, he loses the series. It's just that simple. So every game that he plays against Bomb Warrior is the highest possible pressure, and he's like flirting with disaster every single turn. Like, there were turns where he made a play where he was like 2 off lethal in the worst possible scenario, but he knew he was 2 off lethal in the worst possible scenario, so he just didn't do anything more. He did the bare minimum. There was a couple of spots where I do think he made like small mistakes here and there, but I think overall he just put on a clinic in terms of just technical play. And I think with the lineup that he's playing and the matchups that he comes up against, it's something that really suits that play style as well, because you can break things down to a science. Your opponent is just quite literally trying to kill you with a finite amount of damage in their deck, and you're trying to prevent that from happening. But this is, again, a matchup now where it's not quite as simple as that. And again, Jarla has a decent matchup against the Demon Hunter, which is improved somewhat by having that weapon destruction available to him. But it can still be done for the Demon Hunter here, even against the heavily teched out Priest from Jarla.
Yeah, anything can be done if there's a score on the left side of the hand right now, which there is. So the Demon Hunter can always win here. But I do agree the points about Jarla. I think if you could rate how much he got out of each card value-wise per game basis, you're looking at an easy 4.5 to 5 out of 5 for every single card he ever plays. It's just, could he have done more with this card? No. Every single game is crazy. But now, let's have the decision of whether he wants to actually just respect this Battle Fiend and just Holy Smite it and get it out of the way, or if he wants to save this. But I don't even really see options to play the Holy Smite in the near future for anywhere near the same amount of value anyway. But I do like this.
Ooh, tempos the Pyromancer as well. That is a big call on top of everything else.
Pyromancer, one of the options you have of those big sweeping, almost Reno effects, right?
Yes.
With Pyromancer Apotheosis on a wider board.
Yeah, it's something, if you are playing the Pyro build in this matchup, it's something that you do have to look out for. If you get up to 8, 9, 10 mana and you're still alive and you have Pyro Apotheosis in your hand, all the food that you're then given from your Raised Dead and your Kobold Spellkins and everything that's just putting cheap spells into your hand the entire time, it actually doesn't really matter how big the board is on the other side. You can just play Pyro Apotheosis and proc it like 4 or 5 times with your own minions to heal yourself back up to full a lot of positions. So I do think Pyro is a very important resource in the matchup, but can just get one back now with that Raised Dead, and we'll see if he's holding on to this second one now a little bit more greedily, or whether he's going to commit this one out in tempo soon as well.
And that's it, isn't it? Whenever there's Raised Dead in the Priest's hand, you have to reassess what you think is throwing a minion away, because they're not. They're shelving it for a minute. There's either upside, it doesn't die and it gets to live and keep being annoying to your opponent, or the other upside is, well, if it dies, it's used resources, and you just get it back again, so it's no problem.
This hand from xBlyzes is pretty monstrous, though. He has board right now, he has damage to back that board up, and he has the one-turn kill through a potential Kartut defender, which is what Jarla is looking to defend with as well.
Honestly, the only card I would swap in this hand is if the Aldraki Warblades was a I'm going completely Marrow Slicer, instead, but he might even just skull into one of the other weapons anyway, so it's not a problem. But yeah, outside of the perfect hand, if he could just swap the weapon, then yeah, this looks nigh on perfect for xBlyzes to steal a win here.
And even then, if you were to say to xBlyzes, you're going to draw Warblades instead of Marrow Slicer, but they're not going to have any of their 4 weapon destructions to deal with it, you'd probably take that in this situation.
Agreed. Double Kartut is a nightmare.
Not if you just
unfortunate.
Not if you just die to Kayn off the first one. Again! Again with the Tempo Kayn! Oh, I'm so afraid of what this means against the Kartut defender deck.
Also, xBlyzes is, because he has room, or made room, for those 2 Battle Fiends and 2 Blade Bounds, he isn't running Consume Magic, which means there's no Snap Pick removal for a Death Rattle.
Oh, this is a weird interaction.
Poor warlock.
Is that Marrow Slicer?
He did get a Marrow Slicer.
Yep. Currently.
Well, you can just steal the Kayn.
Yeah, currently the Kayn could not be killed, but then with the Cabal top deck, can now at least be stolen.
It could be killed in extreme circumstances, right? If this is just Soul Mirror.
What is in
I repeat,
one's
it
will?
could not be killed this turn by any legal Hearthstone play. You could have just Aeon Reaved it, I suppose. That one I wouldn't actually complain about too much.
I repeat, it can be killed.
Yeah. I repeat, everything I said was nonsense.
I wonder.
I do like keeping this turn relatively simple here for Jarla. Just steal the Cane. That's one less thing you've got to worry about. With a Kartut, Cane, and Acolyte on the board, I would assume Jarla's going to get the wiggle room to play the Kartut again, or the second Kartut next turn if he needs to.
Right.
That's the issue with Kartut, isn't it? At 6 mana, it is awkward to fit into a turn. So I feel you have to take those turns when you can, just to get them on the board.
Yep. Jarla is very much going back to 30 this game now.
No fragments in the list. You can shuffle. A couple with the Soul Share, of course, but a couple does not look good enough to warrant the play for me, Sottle.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. The Blade Dance.
But I think you can see that, like, Tempo Cane was probably at least fine, if not just the correct decision here. When you look at, like, even without this Kartut healing going off, right? Jarla was at 19. Are you going to be able to push 19 through that Kartut defender with your Cane in one turn? No, almost certainly not, right? So at that point, holding onto the Cane to push through is pointless, and you might as well have just tempoed it out earlier. So I do think xBlyzes has made the right decision there.
And the thing is, it's harder depending on when and how the weapon removal comes out, of course. But the thing for me is, xBlyzes can win if Jarla goes back to 30.
Yep.
It's not like the game's over. He just can do it. He's got enough damage. Obviously, if weapon removal lines up perfectly, that's going to be significantly harder. But it's probably not going to line up perfectly for every single weapon you've got in the deck, because you have 4. So, you know, he can definitely get through this. And already we're seeing this turn, without this Aeon Reaver, it might have actually demanded the Soul Mirror there.
It may have
Although
done,
Cleric
yeah.
obviously going to help him fish.
Usually the Sociologist board is the only thing you're really super scared of with Soul Mirror in the matchup as Priest, so even if that had ended up happening, wouldn't have been the end of the world.
We're still double glaive bound, which can be a little bit scary.
It's true.
What do you even pick here, Sol? Because I want all 3.
What is a loon's will?
I think it's Raised Dead.
Feels like the most unintuitive pick, doesn't it, out of the 3?
Does,
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah. So the reasoning
weird.
behind this is that, like, right now, Jarla's hand will actually just lose board and lose on value to the other side, right? If there's just another Skull of Gul'dan and Jarla just has to draw 1 card turn by turn, and some of those cards are going to be Acidic Swampoos or Kobold Sticky Fingers, he's just going to straight up lose on value from that position. So in his Raised Dead there, he did have, like, Kobold Spellkins and other value engines. He also has Wild Pyromancer, which is obviously absolutely insane if he ever naturally then draws Apotheosis from his deck. So I think, all things considered, Raised Dead had the most upside there.
You don't pick the ones.
And now I imagine we're going to see a Blade Dance here. Oh, those are big. When you see additional Twin Slice generated one way or another for Demon Hunter, those are the games you sneak wins from nowhere, because it just gives you damage you should not be allowed.
Again, what if you just win board, though? What if you just hit the 4/4 and just attack face with the 2/3?
Well, I thought he was going to Blade Dance, actually.
Okay, sure. I could see that as well.
Because just get rid of the minions. Like, are you expecting Priest to just keep dumping minions after minions? You did just see Raised Dead, which I think might be a reason for xBlyzes to hold on to the Blade Dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I can quite confidently say I don't like this line from xBlyzes. I think it's too halfway. I think if you want to fully commit to aggro, then you go Raven's line. And I think if you want to just try and, like, protect your board and push more chip damage over time, then you go with mine. And this is just this is just in the middle.
Yeah. This is just letting your opponent have stuff, right? Like,
Is a loon's will.
Pyro Nova?
You don't pick the ones.
No, I
Can
don't
afford to leave the 1/3 upright.
Oh,
Smite, nice.
don't think there's a world you commit the Pyro here.
Yeah,
You could have gone
problem
Cane
is-
Nova before you committed to the One Thief, which is pretty interesting.
like, trading the Aeon Reaver is what makes me feel uncomfortable here for Jarla, because although you can clear the minions off the board,
Yeah.
you do need to win the game, right? You can't just be like, I'm going to kill all their minions and then hope, you know? So although again Jarla has cleared the board, he's still got this Ain Reaver down. It's not threatening xBlyzes for the foreseeable future.
Yikes.
You're gonna see the pass? Oh, he's gonna swing. Okay.
He's got to push maximum damage every turn from this point. He just kind of has to. Doesn't really have an alternative.
He didn't play all the Twin Slice that
Yeah,
turn,
yeah,
so he
yeah.
did not push.
Sure.
That's what's rough, right? He just dealt 3, Jarla just healed 2. Enjoy your Eldraki Warblades. It has to be Nosdormu, right?
Does Jarla really want to play the game under Nosdormu conditions, though? Does that seem like the thing he wants to do? Take on xBlyzes in a battle of Blitz mode Hearthstone?
What if he ends the game in Nosdormu speed? Because that's what I think Nosdormu should do at this point.
Ah, okay.
Of course, xBlyzes does have the answer here with the Twin Slice and the Blade Dance. So that's going to be a hard luck for Jarla, but I still think that the Nosdormu, you can't just pass up a free 8/8 on an empty board. Madness.
Yeah, completely agree. I will play Blitz mode against anyone if I get a free 8/8 and they don't.
Yeah, if you start with an 8/8. Like... And I'll just play Blitz mode against anyone. Hearthstone, Devs, if you want to chuck that in there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
Again, I think this might be another board focus push here. Kaj, Kane, Smite, heal. That's, yeah, that's right. For a second, I thought that was too much mana, but it's not.
I like this, actually. So he's setting up the situation I've been talking about, right? Where he just really, really, really wants to top deck Apotheosis. Because top deck Apotheosis just ends the game, right? He can just go Pyro Apotheosis and then just play all of his own one-mana spells. And like I said, it just doesn't matter if xBlyzes doesn't have minions at that point. Like, you are just Renoing off your own board at that point anyway. So I think it's a smart hold.
Is xBlyzes going to commit? Okay. That was his Mystery Demon Hunter spell. He kept hold of his created one.
Yep.
So Jarla did not know, but he does know now, and he does know that he's just took 11 to the face. And honestly, although he can heal up to 8, with no Apotheosis, this is scary time here.
Oh, no activator for the Cleric of Scales either. Skull off the top.
Bladebound would be scary as well.
Sure.
Oh, he's committing the Pyro.
It has to be Skull, doesn't it? I don't think anything else is quite good enough. Bladebound pushes 5, and then Jarla only heals up to 5, so then second Marrow Slicer would be an out. Yeah.
The second Gladebound.
Yeah, that's actually this is good enough. It's good enough. There's still a game.
Everything we're saying that isn't the Skull could still be Skull next turn into those things. So
game over.
Apotheosis.
Game over.
Last possible second, and xBlyzes knows it. Wow, the last moment. Please, xBlyzes, let us draw your next card. I just want to see it. Don't you concede.
Jarla
can just have to actually check if there's enough, if there's any more spells before xBlyzes hits concede anyway.
Exactly, yeah. Jarla, considering his sequencing here, if he wanted to play Cleric of Scales, there's a good chance he should have just done that first before the Apotheosis came down, because it's just another minion on board that could have got the healing. I guess it doesn't matter when you play it, because it's just going to be the 1 extra damage either way.
It does, because it means he wouldn't have to play a second spell, right? I'm not saying he wouldn't want to, but he doesn't have to.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but you just are. I mean, you just are. You're playing the spell.
We're just getting technical sequency about it.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing that's changing stuff here is the smite target, right? Because you don't want to smite the opponent's minion, because that reduces the total amount of healing that you potentially have, because you'd much rather deal damage to it this way. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go about that, certainly. In the end, he chooses to hold on to the Cleric of Scales so he can discover another spell if he does pick up a dragon. And I think that is going to be somewhere very, very close to scooping time for xBlyzes here, and we're going to go all the way to a game number 5, Raven.
Yeah, and this is to be expected again, like we talked about at the start of the match, where Demon Hunter is the closest thing to Warrior that isn't really Warrior right now, which means if Jarla was going to force Blyze into a corner, it would probably be against this Demon Hunter deck, because Blyze not having Warrior made this much more difficult for Jarla than, if you're confident in Jarla's lineup, much more difficult than it should have been against a more regular opponent.
Stop freaking rolling Holy Smite. It's not the one he wants. It's far less healing. He could be at 30
Seems to be
by
doing
now,
okay
game.
to me, so...
Yeah, it's cool.
Suspense?
6 of those fragments were in the deck. His deck is actually significantly smaller than it appears to be, which made the Gladebound draws, the Skull draws, and the Marrow Slicer draws much more likely than they appeared to be, but just in the nick of time. Jarla, with the cheesiest grin I think I've ever seen come out of him, did pick up that Apotheosis, had committed the Pyromancer this turn, which I think if he'd have lost that game and lost that series, and potentially gone on to be eliminated from the bracket altogether, I think that would have been a really big talking point, going back to him actually playing the Pyromancer on that turn, exposing it to board. And then Blyze picked up the Gladebound. Absolutely no question of where that damage had to go. I'm sure someone somewhere is saying, well, if you just shoot the Pyromancer, then that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
No, shut up. It always goes face. Set up lethal for yourself with Skull into something
Many
else,
cards.
into Marrow Slicer, Gladebound Adept number 2. So many outs at that point that I think absolutely correctly played in the end from Blyze.
We even saw then, there was a Spirit Jailer in between, but Chaos Strike into Gladebound, Chaos Strike into whatever, into Skull, into whatever. Like the actual chain of cards that was possible for him to get lethal there was so large. It was just the Apotheosis timing was perfect, of course, for Jarla. But that is going to leave Jarla's Warrior up against Demon Hunter, and this is not a matchup I've cast a lot, and it's not because it's Warrior versus Demon Hunter, it's the type of Warrior with all the weapon removal that we've seen in pretty much every deck of Jarla's. There's an Ironbeak Owl in here, the Bulwark of Azeroth is in here, which is, again, obviously a problem against a deck that wants to play aggressively, but with Demon Hunter's hero power, being able to proc charges of it might be less of a problem, depending on timing.
Right.
But then Kargarth, 2 Kartuk Defenders, a decent amount of armor generation with Armor Smiths and Risky Skipper. This might be where we're going to see Jarla just take this victory, honestly, because if I was Demon Hunter, I would not really want to line up against this. The only hope I think Blyze might have is just a lack of card draw for Jarla.
Yes, there is still the 1 Corsair cache, which can draw out the Ankar. Once if that happens, if the Corsair cache the Ankar, then the Ankar functions as a bunch of card draw for you anyway, especially if you get that 3rd charge dropped on it, because then you get Risky Skippers to set up Battle Rages. So you can start to chain the draw if it all comes together, but you can certainly hit kind of the low value portion of your deck as well and get a little bit stuck. But when I said earlier, I think the Druid versus the Demon Hunter was the worst matchup that Blyze had available across the entire match. I think it's pretty close, honestly, between that one and this one. I think the Priest matchup was very, very winnable for his Demon Hunter, if not perhaps somewhat favored with the Kartuk Defender coming in as bad cards for him in the matchup, but then there being 4 other cards potentially in the weapon destructions that can kind of just get in the way. Like, I'm not even sure if they're actively good against Demon Hunter.
Right.
If you just draw them at the wrong time, right, when they don't have a weapon equipped, which can happen quite often. So I think that was a very winnable match for Blyze, but I think this one is another very, very difficult one for him to be facing down with the Demon Hunter.
Yeah, it's again, it's not a matchup I've personally played a lot, and I do play a good chunk of Demon Hunter, but just looking, like, on paper, right, just looking at the deck list, it looks very, very unfun. But now 2 skulls in Blyze's hand, which is pretty huge. It does mean he isn't going to run into the dry resources, top deck wars that we saw of the last game for him there. He is pretty much going to have resources for the majority of this game, and that's what he needs for him to have, and that's what he needs Jarla to not have. He doesn't want to see a good Battle Rage turn, or, as you mentioned, the Corsair cache into Ankar. He doesn't want to see any of that card draw. He wants to beat Jarla's first 10 to 12 cards, basically, in this matchup.
And step 1, he did not see Corsair cache get played on turn 2, which is a huge deal.
This will break your
Because not only would the Ankar into all the card draw be very, very difficult to beat, especially with what it means with tutoring out the Kobold Sticky Fingers on top of everything else, but if he Corsair cashed into the Bulwark, like that's suddenly just really hard for Demon Hunter to beat as well when they have that extra charge of protection to come down later in the game.
Yeah, it's all about timing with Bulwark, right? Because if you want to play early, even if you Corsair cash it, I think generally that's wrong. I think dropping it down like super late game just makes it so impossible for Demon Hunter to get much work done because they don't have any of those small minions left.
Yeah. In this matchup in particular, it should generally come down late when your opponent is looking to have like lapidary turns or Chaos Strike double twin slice with a weapon up kind of turns, right? And I think it's very easy to get a feel of when those turns happen if you've played against Demon Hunter more than a couple of times, right? Like it's pretty clear when they're trying to just set up, damage, go face with straight up damage, 8 this turn, 12 the next turn, try and kill you kind of thing. So I think it's a fairly easy card to time in the matchup when you get used to it.
Actually would really like to see the Kargath here from Jarla. He is going to go for the weapon steal, okay. This is obviously very good. I'm just a big fan of getting the Kargath down ASAP. And just try and draw that prime, or have as many draws at that prime as possible, even though of course it wouldn't be castable for the near future, but just to try and get it, because it's another card that Demon Hunter doesn't have much game versus.
Ooh. xBlyzes feels like he can afford to send this damage into a minion. Not something I expected to be seeing, but he's looking with double skull in hand that he can kind of set up a little bit longer here. Doesn't want to be conceding the board this early, especially without a Blade Dance in his hand. Going back to the previous turn, though, I actually liked playing the Ooze instead and then taking a 2-card Battle Rage with the value bump of the 2-3 into the 2-3, is what I was looking at. But I trust Jarla implicitly and with my life while playing these matchups, so I will assume that he is correct.
So, Derek has many times in our past said to me that Dr. Boom's scheme is the worst Hearthstone card that has ever been made.
It is, yes.
Is it also the best pick here? So, how sick is that? It's got to be the pick, right?
No.
Does he want a lackey? Does he want a random slam? Does he not want unlimited armor?
Slam's sick. It draws a card. Like, isn't that just infinitely better than like 5 or 6 armor?
If it drew a Dr. Boom scheme, it would be good. Yeah.
Oh my.
Ooh. Just think,
like,
survive,
when your question
like,
is, this
turns.
is the worst card that's ever existed, shall we pick it? Like, you should probably be able to answer your own question.
Look, I said Derek said it's the worst card. I never said I agreed with him.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there's skull number 1. Not hitting bad targets. The Lapidary, definitely top tier target there, but the other two, a little bit unfortunate. It's not really saving too much mana, and the mana feeder itself, although nice 0 mana card draw with a hero power, of course, it's not high damage, which is what you're really looking for there.
Most importantly, he's just kind of getting beaten up right now and doesn't actually have a solution to that problem based on his hand at the moment.
I think he might have wanted a shard chatter, honestly, like in this against Control Warrior. He wants the anti-aggro tool. Very strange.
Bladestorm Battle Rage for 3. Is that what you're setting up here? I guess so. So it's interesting to me, because I wondered whether Jarla was just all in on this skipper Battle Rage at some point during the game, but I think if you're going to take that kind of Battle Rage, I go back to the question of whether he should have just oozed and Battle Raged on the previous turn. Obviously, he ended up getting 1 card more, which is certainly something.
Yeah, and I like it. Like we pointed out at the start, right? The only thing that I think trips Jarla up is card draw, or lack of, in this game. If he can draw most of his deck beats xBlyzes' deck, basically, if drawn at an even rate.
Once again, same scenario. He knows Jarla is stable to the point where this Kayn is not just going to burst through a Kartut defender for a 1-turn kill, so as soon as that's not the case, you might as well just tempo it out whenever is the most appropriate time to do so. That means Jarla's Kartut defenders are now in play, and they will be healing him back up at some point in this game. Starting to look sketchy.
Not Corsair Cash. Does have that Ankar now, which only really draws him the skipper and the second Sticky Finger, right?
Yes.
So not really needed to be equipped right now. He could just Bloodsworn Mercenary this Kargath. Was that not great at all?
Why do you love Kargath so much?
I don't know. I just think it's a great card. And then you can play 2 with Bloodsworn Mercenary.
You have an active obsession with this card. Like, I think you have a problem.
I have many. Kargath is one.
Hello, my name is Raven, and I'm a Kargathaholic.
Yeah. Hey! We've had 2 there. The board could have been clear.
Yeah, I do kind of take umbrage with you saying that, like, Corsair doesn't need to be played that turn. Oh, sorry, the Ankar didn't need to be played that turn. Yeah. I was just mimicking you. That's the defense. Because it kind of does, right? Because if you equip it this turn and swing it twice, you always have the weapon destruction on the following turn, which might actually end up being important. There's a world where if you don't equip it as soon as you get it, where like Blyze played a weapon this turn, and then when you went, oh no, now I have to play my Ankar and look for the weapon destruction, and then you hit the risky skipper, and Blyze is actually able to get full value out of one of his weapons.
Sure.
Which could end up being pretty dangerous for you.
Yep, and you know, once again, Jarla's sensible play gets me.
Yeah.
It's fine, trips me up.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a pretty rubbish skull, honestly. Like, the one drop's not really what Blyze is looking for here, I imagine.
It does juice up that sociologist, though. It's a
does,
very,
but
very big deal.
With Jarla beating Blyze on card, okay, maybe not beating with the amount of fragments in, but doing well with card draw, is he expecting this militia to ever survive enough to actually deal any damage?
I mean, kind of. It's a very trimmed down deck list because, again, it's built to deal specifically with Bomb Warrior, so you don't need a whole bunch of minion removal. There's only one Brawl, there's one Bladestorm that got used already, and then there's Barov. That's it in terms of things that deal with wide boards. So I think it's very reasonable at just about any point of the game to just say, all right, I'm all in. Here's my giant board. Do you have the answer?
That's true. I guess he's got to be fearful of skippers to an extent as well.
That's fair.
And most importantly, fearful of the Iron Beak Owl. It's been in hibernation for many years. It came out for what, Felcane? The other week?
That's right, yeah. Dream the Owl, yep.
All I saw was it got played once in 2020. 100% win rate.
100% win rate, yep. Highest win rate, played win rate card in the game.
Yep.
It's interesting though, right? Because Jarla's actually ahead of the counter tech. That's what these Iron Beak Owls are about. That's why he has Iron Beak Owls across a large amount of his lineup. He has one in his Druid, he has one in his Warrior. It's just because he doesn't want to be dealing with that Rattlegore plus Bloodsworn Mercenary that the Warriors are planning to play against him. So he's even got out one step ahead of that and started playing one copy of Iron Beak Owl to deal with that situation as well. Like, the arms race is real with this anti-warrior strat. Like, they are constantly trying to one-up each other. But right now, Jarla is in a very different type of battle.
Yeah, and you can see how it can work, though, right? And how, although I feel like we look forward that Jarla's been so far ahead this game, Jarla's on 17 health. Blyze has a ton of cards and a ton of bursts, right? Like, this is doable. Like, he can deal 17 damage this game. The problem is when we see, for example, the Kartut Defender, but honestly, outside of that, he doesn't have an Armor Smith with these risky skippers. So actually, Blyze just chipping away to the face each turn.
Yeah.
He's going to start stacking up, and Jarla, again, has to... Yes, he can clear this board, but he has to stabilize. That's just 8 damage out of nowhere.
Right.
This is actually so close.
It is. It means he has Warblades, Twin Slice, he has War Makers available to throw in, but he has, just on his own, he has Warblades, Double Twin Slice, and Gladebound Adept on the following turn. And he's just outside of the range where Jarla can Barov, play a minion, and play a Kartut Defender on the other side to be able to clear this board. So Blyze is saying, if you clear, you do not Kartut. If you do not Kartut, I have outs to kill you on the following turn. And you can see, have you ever seen Blyze this invested in an opponent's turn before? Normally he's AFK, he's checking Twitter, he's just playing with his phone. He cannot look away from the board right now because he knows he has this 2-turn setup to try and win the game.
And the difference is, if he wins this, he's done. See you on Sunday. Don't have to worry about the rest. This is a tough turn, and and this is it, right? If we could line card for card up, the Warriors should win this. But that's just not the way it works sometimes. All these one-ups might be biting Jarla just a little bit. The one Blade Storm that, let's remember, was used to actually just draw some cards. Was that good? Was that bad? I don't know.
Second sticky finger now. Oh, Lapidary! Lapidary off the top! That's so potentially huge.
Okay. So Blyze never plays the Eldraki, right?
Does he need to, though, to create the damage breakpoint? Like, I know what you're saying, obviously. It gets stolen. Like, it just deals 2 damage and then heals 2 damage. Almost certainly, right?
Well, can he play it for lethal next turn, is my question, as opposed to playing it for swinging twice.
So here's what I'm concerned about. I want all possible melee damage to go face right now, and then not play the Gladebound, because the Gladebound can kill through Kartu, whereas nothing else can. But I'm not sure if that actually lined up in any way that set up a 2-turn lethal. I was trying to count it, but it's quite hard to do while you're talking at the same time.
I think the issue for that is, I think Blyze is just hard playing around this sticky finger right now, isn't he? Because he's done everything that's not used the weapon to swing. So next turn he's going to go for the full 10 mana, right? Twin Slice, Warblades. Although he could have used a Twin Slice that turn.
Right, he could have just gone like Wandmaker, Lapidary, Twin Slice, Hero Power or something like that. But I don't think that was enough to set up lethal just straight up over the top with Gladebound through a Kartu. So if that's not the case, there's no real point in doing that.
That's a problem.
That is a huge problem. Shield Slam.
Wait. Okay, that looks a little bit strange.
Why?
Could he not have just gone slam the 2/2 and coerce the Gladebound? Then there's no preemptive minions on board to chip the durability. I know you're not getting draw from the slam, but it's just one less durability on this weapon guaranteed, which I think is the only thing keeping Jarla alive right now.
Yeah, it's fair. Certainly something you could have done. Oh, the Armor Smith draw! The nod comes out from Jarla! I think he finally sees it getting pieced together now. But once again, in typical fashion, Jarla does nothing by halves, even though that Armor Smith ends the game with basically any play he makes this turn. Jarla is going to pause, he's going to think it through, and he's not just going to make any play, he's going to make the best one.
It has to be some kind of big Armor Smith turn, right? He has Blood Swan for the Armor Smith as well to generate double. It all just looks too good. The waves are going to kill off the Wandmakers, which protects his Bulwark of Azanoth as well.
Yep. You can just throw your Iron Beak Owl in there if you want, just for the extra armor. Yeah. Actually, couldn't, right? Because by the time you'd play Owl, the enemy minions would all be dead, so you wouldn't actually be able to... everything you could Owl on your side of the board would be detrimental to you. We did it again, Raven! We did it right. We got baited! We did it again! There's no possible way he can be dead this turn, so why would he do anything else? We've talked about it a million times, and we still got baited.
Yep,
That's okay. Oh, amazing.
Blyze knows he can't get there, and Jarla thumbs up. He had a short shift potentially today. He earned the free win, putting him straight in the winner's bracket of his group, and then he just beat Blyze. His anti-warrior lineup having just enough there to prove a problem for Blyze's Demon Hunter. And Jarla just going to book himself a spot on Sunday in the final day, and it's a huge deal. And I think we talk a lot about all of our GMs and their different positionings and past victories. But for Jarla, one of our most consistent GMs across Grandmasters, full stop, not just in Europe, it must sting to just not quite get there, right? Right at the end, you can do well all season, but not quite finish the job. But he has the opportunity again now, booking himself in on that final day.
Yeah, Low-key just might be the best player in the world. And I know like low-key is kind of an idiom and just a cliche at this point, but it's very, very fitting when you apply it to Jarla because he doesn't really make noise. He's never had like a huge tournament win. He's not this big like in-your-face personality that is really memorable and sticks in people's minds. But, you know, if you start just tracing back through his career, his overall win rate in Grandmasters